You know what? I was at an event last night with a couple Democratic members of Congress, and one of them very prominent. And he said to me, Sean, we've known each other a while, and he's from a very prominent political family, and said, I got to be honest with you, I don't know. Like, I've got a lot of programs that go through like the YMCA, the boys clubs, and I'm worried about some of the cuts that we're going to affect. And I said, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I get it. I understand the good that a lot of that stuff does in communities. But I said, with all due respect, you guys, and this echoes what you just said, Dan, I go, the problem is you guys went so far that now people are going, all right, well, let's kind of make it, maybe take it back to square one and rebuild it. But I said, I feel sorry for you. I understand what that does to your community and how important some of these programs are. I know what, the impact they had in where I grew up in different ways. But you guys went so far nuts that it's hard to now feel bad that when we pull it back, and then that's the problem. And he said, okay. And I said, so instead, he said, well, what do you think he goes, just give me some advice. And I said, well, my advice to you is to say, hey, we get it. We went too far. I get that some of these programs sound absolutely nuts and crazy, and you're right to cancel them, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and give specific examples. Elon talked about this yesterday in the cabinet meeting where they got to restore things, but make the case, on merit. Say, hey, these programs do this for this community, and here's why it's important. But you guys now, you got called out, figuratively, for all of the woke, ridiculous, nonsensical spending. Now, so you have a credibility problem, and you need to come back to the table and say, okay, I get it. And I said, I'm not blaming you personally, Congressman, but I'm saying your side. And so you now need to go back to square one and say, okay, guys, how do we show you that these 5 programs weren't nuts?
Yep.
I also think there's a chance that Trump is going to overreach. I mean, the history of politics is you get out of control and you overreach. And so I think there will be opportunities, but people won't hear us until we have some self-reflection. And I think it's not just woke. Like, I think this went on a lot of levels to a lot of other issues where the party, all sorts of parts of society are coming back.
Yeah, let me tell you a story about the airport I'm in right now. This airport used to be called National, and I once went to a meeting with Grover Norquist, the conservative activist who was on the cutting edge of the new model that Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon and others are engaged in, where it's not just providing content, it's also making change. And they said at Grover's meeting, we're going to rename Reagan, the National Airport, after Ronald Reagan. Some of you may not remember, but it used to be Ronald Reagan was seen as the devil by the left. Now, of course, they would happily have Ronald Reagan. And no one on the left paid any attention. They paid no attention to the notion that they were going to rename the airport. And then they did, much to the horror of Gene Sperling and other people in the Clinton administration. They forced the name to change. That project is now being replicated 1,000 times over every day by people on the right who say, what can we do today from the White House, from Charlie Kirk's podcast, from Steve Bannon's podcast, from activists all over the country? What can we do today to claim some ground that the left used to control? And again, the left has no idea this is happening, as best I can tell. They have no strategy to stop it. They are overmatched. And the last thing they don't understand is how much of their power has been based on controlling these institutions.
Another funny story from last night. First of all, Mark, do you know who carried the Reagan bill? This is like Dorkville.
Yeah.
Bob Barr of Georgia. That was because
correct.
Got him doing. So I was out at this event last night, and lots of compliments about the morning meeting. And a guy came up to me and said, I love watching your show because you guys are so blah, blah, blah. He goes, because I can't bring myself to watch Bannon's War Room. And I looked at him and I go, well, first of all, thank you for watching the morning meeting. I really appreciate that. But you should watch the War Room. And he goes, what? And I go, if you want to understand what's happening and who's driving this movement, that's the dumb. I mean, strategically, it's like, well, I'll, listen to Rachel Maddow once in a while. I want to hear what the other side is saying in their arguments. Or actually, you could just watch War Room, and Bannon will play Maddow's clips too. But the point is that I was like, this is the problem. You literally, I get you enjoy our program, and God bless you, and I love you for that. But you're putting your head in the sand when it comes to understanding the other side. You don't have to like Steve, but you have to understand the power and the influence that he has in the movement. Same thing with Charlie and some of these other folks.
Yeah,
Democrats do understand. Like out in the country, I agree with you, Mark. And I think the Gang of 500, as you like to call them, like the older generation doesn't, they get it, but they can't believe it. I do think there are people who, I think the problem is the party does not know, okay, now what do we stand for? Like, right. We know what we did doesn't.
And what's worth fighting for? I can't be very articulate about how exactly the White House Correspondents Association for the last 40 years have aided and abetted Democrats over Republicans. I can hint at it, but I know intuitively they've been a part of the establishment firmament, just like corporate CEOs, just like universities, just like CAA. They've been part of buttressing Democrats and creating an asymmetrical advantage for Democrats. And then the Trump White House is saying, no longer. Like, there'll be a White House group of correspondents, but the Correspondents Association, which has aided and abetted the other side, no, we're just not going to facilitate that. They are losing assets right now every day. The DEI programs are going away from all these corporations, right? Bezos is flipping to be the Wall Street Journal editorial board. If you're a leader of the Democratic Party, you're not in a position to fight to save these assets. There'd be no, even if you wanted to, you probably couldn't at this point. Right. But they're losing assets, and they are either powerless. There's some combination of powerless and ignorant of the fact that losing these assets is meaningful. It's meaningful, and it's a real problem because they don't have ideas, they don't have leaders, they don't have the capacity. So you're not gonna have some young, like Richie Torres isn't going to be like, I need to call Bezos and get him to not change the editorial board, or I need to help strategize a rally on behalf of the White House Correspondents Association. He's got other stuff to do, and he's one of the few people with the creativity and the vision to say we need to have assets. They're losing assets.
This gets back to this whole ethos of what we've talked about. Dan's articulated very well in the past. The Democrats in the media need to say, you're right, and then here's the line, but here's what we care about, or here's what we should preserve. They're missing the opportunity. And I mean, Dan's been singing this from the treetops for months, but it's like every time I hear a Democrat talk about we can all agree they're waste, but we don't like the way we're doing this. My answer is, you had your chance and did nothing. So don't complain that after decades of excuses, someone's finally addressing a $36 trillion debt, a $2 trillion deficit. You may not like it. And again, well, it's not going to address the whole thing. Okay, maybe it gets us a quarter way there, but that's better than the nothing that we're doing now.
Well, I'll just add to this quick, one, please don't tell me it's about debt and deficit, but we'll get to that later on. But two, I think the issue really here for all these companies and Mark, for these institutions is, for the last kind of 20 years, maybe 15, there's been a creep of right and wrong, right? It is hard to run a business where you disrespect half the marketplace. And I think that what is beginning to happen is there's this recognition of, we have to welcome in we have to bring in more customers. We have to be seen as a welcoming place for the other half of the country. And I think for the Democratic Party, it's not that we have to give up our ideals or not fight, but you have to recognize the need to broaden the coalition, to bring in other voices, to at least tolerate and listen to them, versus patronizingly just say, get out.